Thanks, Yashwendra. Very good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you virtually and presenting my thoughts around how we can recover the businesses from a potential cyber attack. I think today all businesses are struggling with the fact that it's not the question of if, but when would they be possibly under a potential cyber attack. It is important for businesses to know and also formulate as part of their business resilience strategy what is the way in which they would recover their businesses. And it starts with protecting your businesses and, of course, protecting your data. We have seen in the past few years how almost largest of all industries have gone through this potential attack. It could be in various forms. It could take a shape of a normal intruder, or it could be an insider itself leading to such a potential grave incident, which can actually bring down the reputation of largest of all companies. We have seen many companies lose not just millions, but billions of dollars in these attacks. Namely, a few, NotPetya actually took down one of the largest shipping giants. Merck really struggled to get, and they were fortunate enough to have some of their key critical assets backed up and in an isolated environment so that they could at least come back in time. And these threats are increasing by the day. Today, every 39 seconds, we are seeing a cyber incident which is potentially coming up. Accenture has actually estimated that in the next 5 years, the potential loss which the industries could face is close to $5.2 trillion. And it's not only the large businesses which are getting affected. Verizon actually did a study, and we really found a staggering 43% of the breaches were in the small businesses. An average cost of a cybercrime is going up to double-digit $1 million. And this is not all. It can be across any potential industry, size, or scale. When we look at what is the motivation between and why do people really get under such threats, there can be many forms of such an external threat. One could be motivated because of you want to just take care of the data, and then once you get the ransom, you want to return it. Maybe have an encrypted format or otherwise. But today, the form and shape in which cyber threat actors have taken this to a very large, motivated, a potential nation state or a politically motivated incident, it is staggering to see many of the critical sectors like healthcare and hospitality being affected badly. And it is not that they take the data, they actually delete it. So it could be just not a ransom, it could be politically motivated and a sabotage or even worse. Hence, there are various forms in which the cyber threat is really coming up. Today, we really look at the motivation. The objective of any attacker is to make sure how fast and how long can I secure the critical asset so that I can bring the businesses down completely. And one of their key target areas are the backups. They really want to go after the backup catalogs. They want to make sure the IT and the backup admins, they are completely paralyzed. The systems cannot be restored back. That's the ultimate objective, and that's when they really surface. When we look at master servers, which actually have the catalog, they really want to take it down so that you can't recover your data. The backup clients, the media server itself, which mounts any system, if that is compromised, you really are suffering a big cyber threat. And of course, when you look at data which is residing on tapes, it could be offsite, but you would need definitely a catalog server which is online to recover the tapes. And therefore, it is also very vulnerable. Not just even cloud today is not too secure. You may be having a data in your production and having a copy of it in a public cloud or in a hybrid cloud. But it's the question of who's having the access to the public cloud. And today's world, these accesses can be compromised, which is why even the cloud is not safe. So where do the business organizations look for that level of resiliency so that in case of a cyber attack, they can be sure that they don't have to pay the ransom. At the same time, they can recover the data and be online at the earliest. When we look at organizations today across the board, I'm sure all of you have also deployed a lot of technologies for continuous availability, making sure your operations are coping up with any kind of disaster. And you must have done DR drills. You must have set up a near DR, for example, to ensure your critical systems are available. Or you could have a far side DR so that you can actually roll into that particular site for your operations and then fail back if required. But cyber resilience is a bit different. Cyber resilience can take a different shape and form, and it could be even more drastic and global in nature. So the impact is not just local in country, it can be global, it spreads very quickly. The recovery time objectives in both the scenarios vary differently. In a DR scenario, you would be looking at continuous availability, instant recoveries, whereas in a cyber resilience, you are more looking at how reliable is my recovery. Am I so sure that now that I go back into my systems, have I tested enough so that every time that I can go back in my system and say clearly that without paying the ransom or any threat, I've recovered all my data securely. The impact is about the validation. Are you so sure that you have recovered all your data? Your data could be your data, it could be your customer data. And hence the importance is even much, much more. And of course, when you look at the topology itself, the DR systems, you could have connected systems, connected data centers. But in a cyber recovery, you would look at an isolated vault kind of an environment where you can be so sure that, yes, the information that I'm keeping in this vault area from where I'm going to recover is isolated from the rest of the data centers. And when you recover, your recovery is not a single standard, immediate one-step recovery. You would like to make it iterative. You would like to do selective recovery. You may like to do a certain critical sets to be recovered first and then the rest. And therefore, it's a very iterative process. Sometimes the recoveries also take into account a larger team of cybersecurity officers who, along with the forensics, have to really see what are the steps you're taking for recovery. So it's a very detailed level of recovery that you have to go for. These are the various differences between a disaster recovery and a cyber recovery, and it shows how critical today one has to be cognizant of why one should be looking at a cyber resilient solution and not just be so sure that you have a DR and that is good enough. So what are technologies and how are regulators coming into the picture? Businesses typically have been keeping their data and securing them. No regulator will come and tell us what to do and what to secure and how to secure. They would just give us certain guidelines. And those guidelines, because of those attacks which have come and surfaced, we have seen certain regulators come in many verticals like financials. They have come out and said, these are the ways that you should secure your gold copies. And they recommend automated operational air gaps. In many cases, they enforce that also, which we'll see in course of other slides, how in the financial sector, those regulators have formulated these guidelines, and these guidelines are taking a various formats across the board. One of the solutions which actually addresses this, not just from a regulatory recommendation point of view, but also from a technology and an operational point of view, is what we have something called as PowerProtect Cyber Recovery. Dell Technologies has been a leader in data protection across the board in terms of not just its software and appliances, but protecting key customer assets, be it on-prem or in any cloud. In fact, right since 2015, we have been protecting in an isolated recovery solution format key customers who are in the financial industry, their key 5 to 10% critical data sets. And we went and introduced a solution in the industry called isolated recovery solutions. And this was the term that we actually coined, and we formulated a software which is called now Cyber Recovery Solution. We introduced this. Today, we are very proud to say we are the first solution provider which is part of a very large alliance program called Sheltered Harbor, which is an initiative amongst the 30 financial institutes in US who came together and said, we need to protect the assets of our businesses, our customers, and the overall socio-economic system who are affected because of us, and those who come on our platform and do the transactions. So Sheltered Harbor initiative actually looks at how do such organizations prepare themselves against potential threat actors. How can they recover even under a situation of a complete lockdown or a zero-day attack? How do they recover the critical assets and come back in time? And therefore, today we are very proud to say that we have over 300 plus cyber recovery customers who are actually deploying our solutions across the board. What exactly are we doing here in a cyber recovery solution? As you know, you may be protecting your data in your primary data center or in your DR data center, or it could be in the cloud. But just having your backup copies and using them for recovery is not good enough. You could have a threat actor who has taken down your backup environment in the first place before surfacing. And therefore, we have followed the regulatory guidelines and come out with a solution which actually takes care of automated operational air gap, in which we take on a periodic basis the critical data sets into a cyber vault that is brought in, and then it has many management hosts. It goes through a lot of validation. Those copies are locked with a retention lock and a certain policy up to a month you can keep in the cyber vault. And you run a lot of heuristics. You run a lot of analytics on this using a software called CyberSense, which takes a view of not just scanning the data sets, but doing a full context indexing, which really governs in the way you are now going to recover your most critical gold copies. And this is a very, very sophisticated way of maintaining those data sets which are being brought into the isolated recoveries vault area. So in case of a potential attack, you know you can go back to a particular time and recover from that gold copy and bring it back to your production systems. Now, how we rank in terms of protecting our critical assets using cyber resilience framework, we always categorize this in good, better, best. In good, we look at hardening the data protection elements, data sets itself, making sure they are complying to the integrated lock functionality as suggested by the SEC. We have third-party references which actually govern that. And moving on from immutable copies, we actually look at how we can protect the organization from even an insider attack, be it voluntary or involuntary. These insiders typically know they have access to the physical systems. They also knowing a lot more about the organization and its behavior. And therefore, keeping yourself immune from all these insider threats is a key element of our protection strategy. One of the key things we offer is a multi-vendor backup support, by which if your target system can understand which is your backup software to which it is writing, it becomes so much easier. And that's where our leadership proves even better for most of the organizations, that we can talk and take data from all sources, be it coming from any environment. And finally, the best solution is when you have an automated air gap, like the way we have in cyber recovery solution, where we are able to really recover, do the full context indexing, making sure that using the AI/ML tools, the CyberSense can really predict which are the file systems which are corrupted, or it detects for certain malware and reports in time. And these reports are very critical because now you are able to show that, yes, this is where the malware has hit, and you can go back in time, pick up the locked copy, which was the most clean copy, and use that for your recovery. In fact, this is what has been recommended and accepted at the Shelter Harbor itself, which is an air gap vault recommendation. In terms of how we stack in our industry, these are the few ways in which many of our solution friends are also trying to do this, but these are the key differentiators that every organization should keep in mind in terms of good, better, best. What are these? How we rank a solution provider from each of these elements is very key. Looking at good, what can be locked in, better is how you're sure of any insider threats, and of course the best is when you really implement an operational air gap. And therefore, making sure that now using our CyberSense software, you are able to not just understand your environment, but also predict and correlate with how a larger consortium in a similar industry should actually gain, which is the Sheltered Harbor initiative. Today, we are seeing most of the cyber recovery solutions really look at only probably taking a metadata and doing the scanning, and then for a deep learning or more analytics, they send it to cloud, which is actually a second pass. And therefore, that results in too much of a time to recover back, which is lost time as well as lost business credibility. With our solution, we are looking at complete scanning of the data, which means file metadata, document metadata, and the document content itself, without rehydrating the backup in the cyber vault. So we are saving the space. We are trying to make it more efficient. These are the ways in which we have helped many industries look at our solution and be so sure that in case of a cyber attack, they can recover and be back to the normal business in no time. Healthcare, financial, life sciences, and even retail. All these organizations have got their critical data sets which need to be protected in an isolated air gap. And they have found a lot of utility by adopting such solutions. Finally, I'd like to leave you with a few thoughts around how we have gone ahead and recommend this solution in many industries. What we want to recommend to everyone is to start now. Look at all your assets. Look at your security posture. You must look at how you're protecting from an intrinsic point of view your security elements. And then, which are your most critical data sets which need to be protected using an operational air gap. And that is what the cyber recovery solution will make sure that these data sets will definitely be away from the attacker's purview, and making sure that you are able to recover in the times that you are likely to commit to your business, and making sure that you are safe without paying any ransom. Hence, in closing, would like to highlight how Dell EMC Cyber Recovery can really make the difference for you. We make sure that your operational air gap is done on a vault site as per the recommendations of regulatory frameworks. We also make sure that the multi-layer security design protects your entire data framework from any insiders, because it's always observed that the insiders contribute to the maximum number of attacks. And it needs to be automated and fully orchestrated using all the heuristics so that you are able to achieve those detection objectives that you signed up with your businesses. Finally, you must look at proven solutions. We have the first who are certified at Sheltered Harbor, and that is a testimony of how robust our framework has been accepted across industries, starting with the financials, going across the related industries. Because cyber attacks today are now coming in and going across all forms and shapes of all sizes of the industry. Looking at how mature our solution has been for the last 5 years, we've got more than 300 customers now who are using this framework. And in closing, I'll just request, be safe and definitely make your businesses more robust against any potential cyber attack. Thank you very much and enjoy your sessions today.